if if you have brain damage, you're more likely to be maybe violent or antisocial.
The FBI released crime data showing that crime had gone down. And, during the presidential debates, David Muir fact-checked Donald Trump saying, actually, crime is down. However, recently, the FBI released new crime data showing that actually it was up. It was up, I believe, 4.5%.
When? What year?
The year prior, 2021.
That it was up.
Yeah. So the latest data that we have.
But we knew. No, it was actually 2022. We knew. We knew. Yeah, it was 2020.
I'm sorry, the increase from 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During COVID. In the wake of COVID, 2022 was up because the data reporting was not complete. But if you look at 2023 data, which is now they have got enough of the police departments online that 94 point something of the country is covered, you will find that crime is down in 2023.
So do you think, I think one of the issues
we had a rise because of COVID, and now it's dropping back down. But again, let's also be clear on this. If you compare 1990 crime with today, it's basically like this. It's just straight down on that.
You want to know something interesting? You know what one of the biggest factors in the decline in murder is? Cell phones. So back in the day, in the 90s, if somebody got stabbed, somebody had to run to a payphone to try and call 911, and that created a massive gap between first response and medical treatment. And so around the time cell phones came out, you see a massive drop in murder charges and homicides. People immediately started thinking like, wow, crime is down. And it's like, well, no, look at the crime data. It is down, it is going down, but it's not the same. There's a decline in crime and a sharp decline in murder because now people were instantly calling 911 and first responders were arriving on scene much more quickly. So that's
okay. But also the other part was, that's interesting.
Crime's been going down.
Crime has been going down. I mean, there's a lot of theories about it. I happen to think it's a function of lead, to be honest with you.
I agree. Lead and gasoline.
Lead and gasoline and lead regulation. It's another example of strong government regulation bringing about benefits that we couldn't even imagine.
I agree. What do you think? I don't understand the mechanism by which lead made crime happen. I saw the reports, though, where
lead is a neurotoxin, and if you have brain damage, you're more likely to be maybe violent or antisocial.
That's crazy. Like in the 70s when we had leaded gasoline and it's just pumping out of all these cars. People are effectively having some kind of effect on their brain that
it aggregates, and so if you are living in areas that had a lot of lead paint hadn't been remediated, and on top of that, you're getting gasoline that's in the air, or I should say, lead that is in the air because of gas that accumulates in your brain. And it creates neurotoxin. That's why we have that problem in Flint, Michigan,
right,
with the lead poisoning. We have a lot of children, who have special needs, and there is data. I mean, this is it's very difficult to assess this stuff, but there's data that shows that about 20 years after lead gasoline is outlawed, or lead in gasoline is outlawed, you see a precipitous drop in crime that's happened both internationally and in this country.
What do you think about phthalates? Are you familiar?
No.
So plastic chemicals leaching into our food.
Oh, yeah.
Even these cans. So I'm going to give a shout out to Liquid Death. They'll get mad at me, I guess. So Liquid Death is water in cans, and it says death to plastic. But every single aluminum can is lined with plastic. So it's all leaching into our, even these midriffs. They say they're endocrine disruptors. So they're affecting people's hormone regulation, hormone balance. This could lead to, depending on the study, hormone imbalance could lead to emotional disturbances or dissociative or identity issues.
This is one of the reasons why, since we are a couple of days away from an election, why I think it's so important to make sure that Donald Trump is not in a position to appoint any more Supreme Court justices. I mean, the damage has been done, but it could be rectified, because one of the things that the Supreme Court has done in its assault on what is known as the Chevron doctrine, and deference is it will over time inhibit the ability of something like the EPA or the USDA or the FDA from assessing in real time that there is a problem with certain products that is poisoning our environment or poisoning our people, and it will inhibit their ability to address it because we don't know in the future, and certainly if what chemicals. We discovered this over time, right? We didn't know this when plastics are fantastic. And then we start to realize there's these PFAS, there's these things that you mentioned, maybe in the context of fracking, there are certain things leaching into water, but you probably know that you can't just there's no, I test water and then all the bad stuff comes back on the test sheet. You must look for specific things. Well, what this Supreme Court has done is inhibited, and this actually is even a problem for investors like the SEC and other agencies. They have inhibited the ability of these agencies to do their work as scientists, as financial regulators, find problems that exist that were not contemplated by Congress and act upon them. Because Congress doesn't have the ability, to act on every single or anticipate every single substance that may be a problem for people or high
fructose corn syrup.
I mean, that's also a problem. That was under the Nixon administration. They decided they wanted to increase the amount of money that expendable money that people had. So they decided to subsidize corn and make all the food cheaper. But
isn't it weird how the high fructose corn syrup thing happens? They subsidize corn, so then these researchers are like, corn's so cheap now because it's being paid for by the government, by taxpayers, that we can produce. It's actually difficult to make high fructose corn syrup. It's more expensive than sugar, but the government subsidy has resulted in
100%. It's also the filler in all our foods.
Yeah. I was reading something recently that said that the high colon cancer rate among young people is due to emulsifiers. They're using like Gellan gum and guar gum and these things in dairy products. So, or not even just dairy products, but like to make it seem like it's fatty. And so you're actually just eating this like gum stuff that gunks up your insides. I don't know how you appropriately regulate or deal with things like that, because it's like you're saying, we don't know what it's going to do until we have all this data and research for a long period of time.
I mean, we could regulate against it. Like, I wasn't quite a fan of Michael Bloomberg, but one of the things he did was, I think it was during the Bloomberg administration, there were like polysaturated fats, I think it was, that were outlawed in New York City. I think that's become the norm around the country. Even you couldn't buy a 40-ounce soda.
That was kind of weird.
Not really, because it's the same principle, right? I mean, the fact is that and the pushback from conservatives in this was so ridiculous because, look, I can't go buy a pony version of like a beer. Like, I don't want a 12-ounce beer.
It's not illegal.
I want but I can't, it's not available to me. I mean, the size distribution, what difference does it make? Like at the end of the day.
Right, well, that's true because people just bought 2 sodas.
It is, yeah. I mean, if you buy 2 sodas, at least you're trying to basically, you're not outlawing sodas or whatnot, but you're trying to encourage less cost essentially for society, right? Because more people get diabetes, that ends up costing society more. I mean, so there's a lot of value to regulation. Look, we saw this in the context of light bulbs. The light technology we have in here, right? All these LEDs, it's a lot cooler in here than it would be if we had the old-timey lights.
Oh, they burn out too.
The LEDs don't. They're cheaper. It took a couple of years before you got the technology was better. But maybe you remember this, but the outrage by conservatives over the light bulbs, and we hear Trump talk about this too with the toilets and whatnot. Incidentally, I'm very sorry. You have a very fancy toilet. And you have a very fancy toilet.
You apologized.
Well, it wouldn't flush.
You got to, yeah, because it's a fancy toilet. It's trying to save water. We try, man. So
No, I appreciate that.
but you end up having to press it several times, and then
it didn't work for me.
should we just get the regular one? The regular?
I don't know what you should do, but maybe I would call the authorities because
Well, I mean, but that's kind of an issue, right? We have this like high-end eco toilet. It will.
Well, it's a bidet, and it's fantastic. I really enjoyed that part of it. It's just,
But it won't flush.
it didn't flush.
Yeah, people keep asking, like, I don't understand. I'm like, you got to press it like 3 times because it has like a sensor.
I pressed it like 5.
So I mean, this kind of feels like an example. So we agree. We want to reduce excess waste. We want to reduce overuse waste in general. Like we don't want to produce waste. We want to not waste things like fresh water. But now we have a toilet that requires 5 flushes because we tried doing the right thing.
Well, I mean, look, you just bought the wrong toilet. I mean,
One downstairs and have the
I have
problem.
low flow. You can find low flow, manual toilets. I mean, that's a high end toilet. You just somebody screwed up. But I mean, the bottom line is all of these. There are definitely regulations. Nobody's forcing you to buy that toilet, but there are definitely regulations that we find over time are not as effective as we thought. But the bottom line is all of this deregulation that we're seeing is a function of largely of, well, certainly of conservatives, but largely a function of the Republican Party. And now we see, for me, Kamala Harris would not be the first person that I would vote for, but in terms of the Supreme Court, that alone is enough for me.
How do we balance?
And federal courts, I would say too, broadly. I mean,
How do we balance this? Right. So there's a push and pull between private and public. There are, I've never been a laissez-faire libertarian guy. I've never heard a good argument from a libertarian about how you protect water. I've often brought up the Clean Water Restoration Act. Are you familiar?
a little bit.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just I think it was the 70s. I'm not sure if it was the Cuyahoga River.
It was the Cuyahoga River in
Burst
Ohio
into
that was
flames.
on fire, and that's where we got the EPA from.
Right. And people were like, why is this? And what ends up happening is all of these corporations say, don't look at me. I only did a little bit. And it's like, well, yeah, but literally everybody doing a little bit is an avalanche.
Yes, of course.
So I've never heard a good answer for how you deal with something like that. Just claiming someone owns the river changes nothing. Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.